Shalom, Israel. It's that time again. The I.S.U.P.K. under commanding General YAHANNA presents the Lord's 57th annual Passover. That's right, the Lord's 57th annual Passover, April 4th, 2026 in Houston, Texas. All black Hispanics and Native Americans are commanded to observe the Lord's Passover. This will be the biggest Passover to date. You do not want to miss this. Fresh lamb, fresh wine, and bitter herbs as commanded by the Most High. Only $200 per person ages 17 and up. The biggest event of the year. There is only one Passover, and it's under commanding General YAHANNA. See you there, Israel. Shalom.
Nobody else there to compare to. Train for war, men of war, and warlike apparel.
He parted the Red Sea, and the entire nation of Israel walked out of the slavery of slavery.
The I.S.U.P.K. presents the Lord's 57th annual Passover, April 4th, 2026 in Houston, Texas. You do not want to miss this one, Israel. Shalom.
Shalom, Israel. It's that time again. The I.S.U.P.K. under commanding General YAHANNA presents the Lord's 57th annual Passover. That's right, the Lord's 57th annual Passover, April 4th, 2026 in Houston, Texas. All black Hispanics and Native Americans are commanded to observe the Lord's Passover. This will be the biggest Passover to date. You do not want to miss this. Fresh lamb, fresh wine, and bitter herbs as commanded by the Most High. Only $200 per person ages 17 and up. The biggest event of the year. There is only one Passover, and it's under commanding General YAHANNA. See you there, Israel. Shalom.
Nobody else there to compare to. Train for war, men of war, and warlike.
He parted the Red Sea, and the entire nation of Israel walked out of the slavery of slavery.
The I.S.U.P.K. presents the Lord's 57th annual Passover, April 4th, 2026 in Houston, Texas. You do not want to miss this one, Israel. Shalom.
Shalom, Israel. It's that time again. The I.S.U.P.K. under commanding General YAHANNA presents the Lord's 57th annual Passover. That's right, the Lord's 57th annual Passover, April 4th, 2026 in Houston, Texas. All black Hispanics and Native Americans are commanded to observe the Lord's Passover. This will be the biggest Passover to date. You do not want to miss this. Fresh lamb, fresh wine, and bitter herbs as commanded by the Most High. Only $200 per person ages 17 and up. The biggest event of the year. There is only one Passover, and it's under commanding General YAHANNA. See you there, Israel. Shalom.
Nobody else there to compare to. Train for war, men of war, and warlike apparel.
Hey, listen, brothers and sisters, man. If you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button, man. Subscribe to this channel. And also, please, go to isupk.com and pay your tithe. Drop me some cash so we can move around this planet like we need to, man, and do the things we need to do.
They're one West. They're one West. They're one West. Hey, Shalom, Yahweh Hashem Shabrakatam to all the brothers, Yahweh Shemar Lathan Bashem Yahweh to all the sisters. I'm Priest and Officer 500 Barak Yala with the I.S.U.P.K, which stands for the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under commanding General YAHANNA. You understand? We're back at it again with our history classes. Since 1969, I've been teaching you nothing but the truth when it comes to our people, our identity, our culture, our language, our history, which is what is tonight, the history class. You understand? Something that you don't learn in your regular curriculum that's provided to you by your oppressor. Why? Because the winners control the narrative. You understand? There's always two sides of the story. There's the side of the oppressor and the side of the oppressed. What we're about to see tonight is that our oppressor is diabolical. Like, damn, there's no way to describe it. You just have to say diabolical, really. He's a vile beast, the worst animal on the face of the earth. Listen, after what we're going to see today, you going to put in your mind that you rather deal with a wild, rabid tiger than your oppressor. I'm telling you right now. And the sad part about this is that despite the fact that our oppressor treats us the way he treats us for the past, what, thousands of years, to be honest, we're still taught in the church to love them, to forgive them. We're not taught to forgive each other. How do we know that? Because the Bloods and the Crips are still killing each other. For probably a conflict that none of these niggas know where it started from. The GDs and the BDs kill each other. The Haitians and the Dominicans still kill each other, not understanding that the root cause of their issue is that the white man is the devil the Bible speaks of. Literally. You understand? What we're about to see tonight is, good night. The topic of the next few classes, right, which we'll alternate between French and English every other Sunday. The topic of these classes is, our oppressor is really a mad scientist. Like you see in the movies when you see mad scientists, you know, experimenting on people, doing all types of weird stuff, right? And you're like, damn, that belongs in the movie. That's like horrible, horrific. It's like, good night. I would have never thought that could ever happen in real life. Well, this is going to be the topic of the next few classes. Our oppressor experimented on us. We were guinea pigs, from the oldest to the youngest. Men, women, children, it did not matter. You understand? And this is what we're about to see tonight. Right, so let me pull up my PowerPoint. Bear with me 1 second. I'll pull up this PowerPoint and then we'll get into it. It's a lot here. Let me share my screen. Any questions or comments, of course, put it in the chat. If you want to be in the school, well, really, you don't have much of a choice. To be honest, with the current events, you better be in the school. Click on the sign in and sign out links in the beginning and the end of the class. Do your 90 days. Get your Hebrew name, right? Become a new person and help save your people. Bear with me 1 moment. Good night. About to share my screen just now. So our oppressor is a mad scientist. We're about to get into some of the experiments that he did on us. And it's horrible. It's horrific. You understand? So much so that the era or time that these experiments were conducted on us, they deem it, that era, one of the worst eras in the history of the planet Earth. Literally. You understand? Which era is this? Some may ask. It's the colonial era of the transatlantic slave trade. Believe it or not. So who could tell me if they recognize this person right here? Who could tell me if they know who this is? You understand? Let me give y'all a few seconds. Tell me who this is, if you know. If you don't, you're about to know. I'm gonna give y'all a hint, right? If you are in the medical field, maybe you should know about this person. Whatever medical field you're in. This person is in the medical field. Matter of fact, he's a pioneer of a specific field in the medical field, literally. He is deemed a forefather, pioneer. He paved the way to a medical field that we got today. But no sweat. His name is James Marion Sims. James Marion Sims is considered the father or pioneer of modern day gynecology. What is gynecology? Is pretty much the medicine or medical field of the female reproductive system. You understand? And with that said, y'all pretty much know where this is going. Because again, our oppressor is a monster. This devil right here experimented on our sisters, on our grandmothers, on our great-grandmothers, on our daughters. Name it, he did it. You're about to see how horrible our people suffered during that time at the hands of that devil, James Marion Sims. Remember him, because every single nation has to pay for the crime they committed against us. Not because he passed away and he's no longer on the planet right now, currently, right? That he will not pay. All these oppressors will pay in the kingdom. What scripture says reward them double. Well, we're about to see what he did to us, because his captivity is not going to be pleasant. Good night, Salakia. So James Marion Sims was an American physician in the field of surgery. And that's wild. His most famous work was the development of a surgical technique for the repair of vesicovaginal fistula, a severe complication of obstructed childbirth. However, he developed this technique via non-consensual and anesthetized surgeries on enslaved Black women, Anarcha, Westcott, Lucy, and Betsy, and impoverished Irish women. He is also remembered for inventing the Sims speculum, Sims sigmoid catheter, however you pronounce that word, and the Sims position. Now, mind you, they said impoverished Irish women. The truth is, which we're about to see later on, that he didn't use anesthesia on black slaves. He did on white women, though. You know, these white women were anesthetized. They were. Why? Because it was deemed that white women could feel pain. That's why they need anesthesia. But Black women do not feel pain. They do not feel pain. I think they used to say that it was like a nervous reaction, when really the pain was excruciating. This racist white devil pioneered modern day gynecology. We're gonna see as well some of the tools, such as the speculum, the sigmoid catheter, as well as the position that he said that he made up, you know, that's still being used today. But imagine that our people had to suffer unbearable pain for you to have modern day gynecology and the tools being used in that field, right? So what is gynecology again? Is the branch of medicine that deals with the diseases and routine physical care of the reproductive system of women. So this is the sim speculum. That's what a speculum looks like. And it just, the shape of it, I'm like, damn, how long it took you to come up with this? You understand? That's crazy. This is what they're being used today in gynecology. Again, the speculum. This is the Sims catheter. You know, you go on, you can look up on your free time how it is used in gynecology. You know, I'm not gonna get the channel clipped just because you're curious. Just know that our women suffered for him to develop these tools being used today. You understand? And this is, that woman laying on her side is what they call the Sims position, which he invented by torturing, literally, our sisters. So to get back to it, so against significant opposition, he established in New York the first hospital in the United States specifically for women. You understand? Why against significant opposition? Because it was no secret how he came up with his techniques. It was no secret. He used enslaved black women without anesthesia. Some as young as, listen, not even just the gynecology part. We're about to see as well. He experimented on children. I think there was like some type of condition that children were born with. Yo, he literally opened up their craniums. Now, let me not just give you the whole class right now. You understand? Bear with me for a second. Against significant opposition. Why? Because people knew exactly what he was doing. You understand? And a lot of his, experiments were failing. Most of the experiments were failing. You know how long it took for him to come up with these tools? Do you know how long? We're about to see how long it took for him to make this experiment successful, these procedures successful. It took a minute. It took a long suffering. You understand? He was forced out of the hospital he founded because he insisted on treating cancer patients. They could not trust this devil with cancer patients. Who knows? He was opening black people up with without anesthesia to remove a tumor. Good night. Imagine that. He is not. He founded the hospital, and he's being kicked out because he's not trusted with the patients for very good reasons. He played a small role in the creation of the nation's first cancer hospital, which opened after his death. Salakia. He was one of the most famous and venerated physicians in the country because of his diabolical practices. You understand? In 1876, he was elected president of the American Medical Association. And things like that explain how our people till this day, blacks, Latinos, and natives, do not like to go out to the doctor. You understand? Native women were till this day are still sterilized, without, unconsensually sterilized. Black women as well, Hispanics as well. Why? Because our oppressor is a vile beast. You understand? Like, no, none of these. You're about to see even then that this devil did not even care about the medical aspect of it or to help the slaves he was experimenting on. We're about to see why he developed the gynecology, which we have this day. And him being elected as the president of the American Medical Association shows you that really there is an agenda. There was always an agenda to make sure that you're, to unalive you, mass unalive you. You understand? You are nothing to them but property. And if we look into the history of how slaves were treated by the doctor, is because they needed to go back on the field. So a lot of times, let's say you lose a limb or you get the limb cut off, the hell with losing it. They cut your foot if you try to run away. You know what they would do? You see in movies when how do you call it? They apply damn, I forgot the word in English, but they apply a lot of heat. They heat up some metal. They apply it to the wound. They used to do that to the slaves. That, yo, listen, it heals right away. It closes up the wound. It stops the bleeding. Now get back on the field. Literally. What was the other option for the slaves to not work on? Some slaves, damn, I'll have to revisit that class. Some slaves cut off their own limbs to show like, yeah, I can't work. Well, guess what? You're gonna have to go back to work. What's the other option? If you're useless to me, right? Might as well be dead. You're gonna be gator bait. You're gonna be dog food, literally. You're gonna be listen. You're gonna be slave food, or the slave master's food. You're useless. You understand? If you think that there is an agenda today from our oppressor, you know, on how he operates with us at the clinic, in the hospital, the doctor. Imagine back then. Imagine in the 1800s. The modern day gynecology was developed by a racist slave owner. He did not care about women. He didn't. You're going to see that just now. Salakia for the sidebar. So he was one of the first American physicians to become famous in Europe. He openly boasted that he was the second wealthiest doctor in the country. Imagine that. Damn. Our oppressor. Our oppressor is boasting about his malpractice. I'm going to just call it a malpractice. Really. Because we're about to see how long it took for him to develop the techniques that are being used today in modern day gynecology. However, a medical ethicist, Baron H. Lerner, states that one would be hard-pressed to find a more controversial figure in the history of medicine. Because again, it was not about the well-being of the people he operated on at all. Doctors want to be doctors to help the world, right? He did it. He had a whole different agenda on why he wanted to, for lack of, I'm not even going to say help the women who had women issues, and why he wanted to practice what he did. And he didn't even care about it. It wasn't even about women issues, really, because he was trying to treat cancer patients. They told him, "La, you ain't treating no cancer patients. We're kicking you out the hospital you found it. You're crazy or what?" It's a lot. A statue in his honor, the first statue in the United States in honor of a physician, was erected in 1894 in Bryant Park in New York City, but removed in 2018. I don't even know. That's no different than putting up a statue of Christopher Columbus. That's no different than putting up a statue of any colonizer, of any slave master. A statue of, let's say Montreal would have a statue of James McGill, who was a slave master, whose McGill University was named after, whose McGill subway station was named after. Damn, McGill Street was named after. This man was a slave master. That's no different at all. You understand? That's no different than having a statue of Napoleon in Haiti or in any French colony. You should never have put that up. And it took a minute to take it down, clearly. Damn. Over 100 years to take down a statue of a slave master that tortured black women to develop the medicine, develop the medical field that there is today called gynecology. Oh, press don't give a damn about you or your suffering. And the only reason why we moved in 2018, of course, was protest, right? Not only that, but you see how it pains white people to discuss the atrocities they did to us. That's in the Bible. It pains them to speak on it. It's like they feel uncomfortable. Why? Because imagine now, right, something so great to help the women, you know, and their women issues. Something so great. Medicine, doctors, surgeons was developed by torturing black people? Damn. Is it really that great? Was it really worth the suffering? Should he really have had a statue? Well, it don't matter at this point. What needs to matter is the truth. The truth that you're not being taught in school. Listen, how many of y'all are going to medical school, want to become black gynecologist, Latina gynecologist, native gynecologist, and not even know that the only reason you're able to be a gynecologist and learn what you're learning in your field, in university, college, or whatnot, because it was a racist white slave owner called James Marion Sims that experimented on black women. That's why. Do they teach you that? Because I know for a fact that when you go learn in medical school, right? You don't just learn the basic stuff of whatever they're doing in that field, being a nurse, being a surgeon, or whatnot. Some of the curriculum is the history of it. Do they teach that history though in the curriculum? Do they teach you the history of who is the father of modern day gynecology? Who is James Marion Sims? What did he do and how did he develop modern day gynecology? Do they teach you that? You understand? Listen, if you look it up, let me see a black gynecologist. Let me see if we could find a black gynecologist. I guarantee we'll find a black gynecologist and then you won't even know. Well, good night. They did not know that their practice comes from slavery. You understand? Let me see if I can find you one. I should have had that ready for y'all. And that's funny as hell. That we don't even know how our people, we made this empire great. That's really what it is. Listen, how much a gynecologist gets paid? That's what I know. How much money are they making till this day from the suffering of our people? Listen, let's see. Gynecologist pay rate. Good night. Look at this. Let me share my screen, right? They banking on our suffering. This is a gynecologist pay rate. In Canada, again, let me not go in the US because the US, I know they get paid more. Gynecologist pay rates in Canada. So let me share my screen. Gynecologist pay rates in Canada vary significantly by experience, location, and practice, but generally range from the low 100,000s to the over 400,000 annually, with averages often falling around 300 to 400 plus thousand in major areas like Quebec, and potentially higher in some smaller towns and specialized roles, reflecting substantial income potential with experience. Damn, national average in ranges in Canada, the median around $419,180 a year, with a range showing high earning potential. Look at this. Job bank median ranges from 397,000 in Quebec to 530,000 on Prince Edward Island, with high variability by province. Good night. Listen, this is how much you can make over $500,000 because black women were experimented on during slavery. The reasons why You're making $500,000 today. You're buying your houses as a gynecologist. You understand? You're buying, I don't give a damn what you're buying today, right? You got them devils. You profit from our suffering. Literally. Like, this is us being tortured damn near to death. So what? So you can make between 100 to over 500K a year? Is it really worth it, white people? Let's be honest, white people, right, who seek justice throughout the face of the earth. Y'all all about justice and about how we should love the world. You understand? Stop the suffering of the world. Black women being experimented on during slavery, was it worth your $400,000? Over $400,000 every year. Is it truly worth it? Is the suffering of another people worth you buying a house? And I know a lot of y'all are drug addicts too. A lot of doctors are junkies. They get high on all the medicine, the ketamine, the cocaine, the opiates, the opioids, Salakia. You being a rich junkie, is it worth it? Are people suffering really worth $400,000? That is diabolical. Let me see, is a gynecologist pay rate in the US? It's pretty much the same. Damn. If not more. That is crazy. Let me share my screen for y'all. 1 second. The gynecologist pay rates in the US is the same, damn near. Between 270 to 280 annually, with ranges over 400,000 depending on experience. Location higher in North Dakota and South Dakota, surprisingly, right? Some top earners exceeding $400,000 to $500,000 notes. Is it really worth it? Are people suffering? Are women dying? Was it really worth it? This is a rhetorical question, of course. I'm not expecting white people to be honest and say, no, it's not worth it. Nobody should be suffering like that. I don't even care if some of them might say, yes, it was worth it. I would not be surprised, because our oppressor is a vile, disgusting beast that has no remorse for the pain he causes others. If you truly ask a white person, was it really worth it? They might say yes, for the greater good. People had to suffer for the greater good. That's what they would say. This is the psyche of a white man. Yes, for the greater good, it was worth it that black women had to suffer without anesthesia to develop modern day gynecology. Our oppressor is truly the goddamn devil the Bible speaks of. So, Laki, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Maybe 1 second. There are ethical questions raised by how he developed his surgical techniques, of course. He operated on enslaved black women and girls. I thought it was only black women. Nah, it don't matter how young they were. It don't matter how old they were. It don't matter if they had menopause. He operated on all grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, our sisters, our daughters, our nieces. Why? Because he said black people do not feel the pain. He operated on them so that you can make 400K today for the greater good of medicine, right? Who, like prisoners, cannot meaningfully consent because they cannot refuse. It's not they cannot refuse. I mean, they would refuse and they would still force to do it. Just keep in mind that this is a time of slavery. You can't say no to your oppressor. You can't say no to your slave master. I mean, you could and just die, or you couldn't. They would still just do whatever they wanted to do with you, right? In the 20th century, this was condemned as an improper use of human experimental subjects, and Sims was described as a prime example of progress in the medical profession made at the expense of a vulnerable population. This is exactly how you'll develop modern day gynecology. And he was not the only one, but he was the one when it came to gynecology, though. That's it. Because there were multiple practices, right? Just like what we covered probably next week or so, or in the next class, there were a lot of practices. Like the way you have your nutritional charts is because native children were starved to death in residential schools in Canada. That's how you have your nutritional charts today. We suffered the same exact way. Blacks, Latinos, and natives suffered the same exact way. Black women were tortured to death so y'all could have gynecology today and make $400,000 a year, white people. You understand? Sims' practices were defended, good night, as consistent with the U.S. in the era in which he lived by physician and anthropologist Lewis Wall and other medical historians. They're basically saying, listen, at the time, they did nothing that nobody could have done. That's a lie. White people, they're just basically saying they don't care about your pain and suffering. That's what they're saying. At the time, it was the norm. You see, that's the problem with Lewis Wall and other medical historians. When they say, at the time, it was the norm. At the time, you know, no one could protest it or speak against it. That's a lie. That's a lie. At the time, if to say that at the time it was the norm, so, you know, y'all are defending Marion Sims, y'all are the same reasons y'all would vote for Donald Trump, despite him being on the Epstein list. Why? Because y'all are natural pedophiles. Where's the proof? According to history, the Greco-Roman Empire legalized pedophilia. That's the proof. At the time, it was the norm. That's why y'all don't have. That's why y'all hate immigrants more than y'all hate pedophiles. Y'all could catch all the Haitian immigrants, Mexican immigrants, Jamaican immigrants, Honduran immigrants, right, with ICE. But y'all cannot catch one single pedophile. Like for 100,000, what you call to be illegal immigrants, where there is really no such thing as an illegal immigrant on stolen land. For 100,000 of them, how many pedophiles you caught? How many white pedophiles you catch? You understand? Y'all really don't have an issue with pedophiles. Y'all don't. Because it's in your nature to be like that. Let me pull up a precept to show y'all, right? Let's go to the book of Hebrews. The Hebrews chapter 12. Let me share my screen. The book of Hebrews chapter 12, verse 16. Says this, lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau. Who's Esau? That's the biblical name of the white race. The biblical name of the Caucasian race, of our oppressor. Esau, or Edom, the forefather of the Edomites, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. There is no more profane fornicator or profane person than these people. So much so, they made pedophilia legal. It's called pederastry. Y'all can look it up. It's not slandering, or, you know, it's not an opinion. It's not slandering. That's historical records. Even, right? Damn, you know what? I'm not even going to give you too much of the history because we're going to cover that history during the classes. If I give you all the history right now, there ain't no point of making a class about it, right? But this is your oppressor right here. And his nature, you could see it on a daily basis. It's not a secret, and they don't hide it. They prove they don't. Listen, maybe they're trying to hide it now. You know, Donald Trump is saying that Donald Trump on the Epstein list is another Donald Trump. That's crazy. You know. But let's get back to the PowerPoint. Salakia, or the sidebar. Few medical doctors have been as lauded and loathed as James Marion Sims. Credited as the father of modern gynecology, Sims developed pioneering tools and surgical techniques related to women's reproductive health, which we see in tools earlier, right? In 1876, he was named the president of the Medical Association, and in 1880 became the president of the American Gynecological Society, an organization he helped found. That is diabolical. Damn. I don't even know where to start with this. That's crazy. The 19th century physician has been lionized with half a dozen statues around the country. We just seen that one of them in New York was taken down because listen, how you gonna put up a statue of a man that's torturing black women? You understand? But because Sims' research was conducted on enslaved black women without anesthesia, medical ethicists, historians, and others say his use of enslaved black bodies as medical test subject falls into a long, ethically bereft history that includes the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and Henrietta Lacks, which we'll go over as well. Why? Because now we're afraid to go to the doctor. You might have an issue that you're afraid to address because of post-traumatic syndrome that's passed down from generation to generation. That's why we're still afraid to go to the doctor. That's why a lot of y'all were afraid to take the vaccine. Like, no, they're going to poison us with the vaccine. They did that with the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. You know, our women, listen, a lot of women die during childbirth in the hospitals. You wonder why? Our women don't even want a white nurse. What's the name of the sister that died in Montreal? I think it was 2-3 years ago. Joyce Echaquan. This is how we're treated. There's a history of us just dying at their hands. And they're supposed to help the people. They're in the medical field because they want to help. That's what they claim they want to do. You understand? And really, when it says test subjects, you know what a test subject is? It's a guinea pig. That's what it is. We're guinea pigs for them to develop gynecology today. And I'm going to bring this up. I'll make a clip after that, right? Just so y'all could be rich off of our suffering. Just so y'all could make $400,000, we had to suffer. White man is the devil the Bible speaks of, Salakia. Critics say Sims cared more about the experiments than in providing therapeutic treatment. What did I tell you earlier? He didn't care about the medical aspect. He didn't care about if these women, he experimented on kids too. He didn't care about if these women or girls were feeling, you know, uncomfortable in their reproductive part or not. He didn't care about that. He cared about the experiment. He wanted to see how far he could go. What can he create? You understand? What work can be done? He didn't care about relieving them from pain or relieving them from discomfort. He didn't give a damn about that. It even goes further than that. I'm going to show you why. Because what were our women used to do? They were used to breed more slaves. If there's something wrong with the reproductive system of a black woman, how can she reproduce more slaves? He didn't care about the reproductive system as far as them having a health issue or discomfort. What did it say again? It says critics says Sims cared more about the experiments than in providing therapeutic treatment, Salakia, and that he caused untold suffering Damn, imagine something so bad that it can't even be told. Untold suffering by operating under the racist notion that black people did not feel pain. We're going to see later, mind you now, he operated on black women and girls without anesthesia, but he also operated on white women. You know what was the difference though? That he provided them anesthesia. Why? Because white women feel pain. They're delicate. They're fragile. Black women are robust and they don't feel the pain like an animal. You know, they don't have emotions. It's just a nervous reaction. That was the racist notion. Till this day, I was gonna say back then. Till this day, that's how they think of us. We're not humans. We're subhumans. We're not even fully men. We're 3/5 of a man on the Constitution of America. They didn't give a damn back then. They don't give a damn today, and they will not give a damn tomorrow. You understand? So like it. Sims, who practiced medicine at a time when treating women was considered distasteful and rarely done, invented the vaginal speculum, which we've seen earlier, a tool used for dilation and examination. Why was it considered distasteful? You find out that at the time they were saying women are sources of diseases and all types of excuses, right? Which shows you again, he really didn't care about the women, because it was distasteful to treat women, especially when they had an issue with the reproductive part. You understand? You see that he only cared about not only the experiment, but about making sure that these black women are able to produce more slaves. If there's an issue with the reproductive system, they're useless. As opposed to, you know, because it do cost money to import goods, and we were the goods at the time. As opposed to doing that, let's just fix their internal issue. Let's see, what's the problem? Let me fix it. Let me run experiments, because it was not only them affected by the childbirth issue, right? What's it called again? The fistula, the vaginal fistula or whatnot. But to make sure that the technique are perfected, he had to practice and perfect it. But not on white women. You can't damage a white woman, but you could damage a slave. And if it dies, you're going to replace it. Just like a guinea pig. Now you see how today they say, let's not experiment on animals no more. We were the animals getting experimented on back then in slavery. You understand? We were. But bear with me 1 second. Babukusha. I'll play a quick commercial. Bear with me 1 second.
Shalom, Israel. It's that time again. The I.S.U.P.K. under commanding General YAHANNA presents the Lord's 57th annual Passover. That's right, the Lord's 57th annual Passover, April 4th, 2026 in Houston, Texas. All black Hispanics and Native Americans are commanded to observe the Lord's Passover. This will be the biggest Passover to date. You do not want to miss this. Fresh lamb, fresh wine, and bitter herbs as commanded by the Most High. Only $200 per person ages 17 and up. The biggest event of the year. There is only one Passover, and it's under commanding General YAHANNA. See you there, Israel. Shalom.
Nobody else there to compare to. Train for war, men of war, and warlike apparel. Prefer our leaders, can't get between us. Watch where you stepping.
All right, we're back. You understand? And again, there was a notion that we didn't feel no pain. So he got to experiment freely on black women, damage them as much as possible until it was impossible no more. Quiet, because they're dead. You understand? Salakia. He also pioneered a surgical technique to repair the vesico-vaginal fistula, which is a condition that, you know, at the time was common right? So a common 19th century complication of childbirth in which a tear between the uterus and bladder caused constant pain and urine leakage. The fistula is basically a rupture of the vaginal wall. It could be a rupture that links the vaginal wall to the bladder, to the colon, or the bladder, the colon, and something else. You understand? I forgot. You see, in the UPK, we're learned Negroes. We know what we're talking about. Y'all can look, y'all go on Google and see if I made that up. That's a real thing. You know, we know what we're talking. This is the universal practical knowledge you don't get in school. You definitely don't get in the church. That this Christian slave master made black women suffer so white people can make $400,000 a year today as gynecologists. So his defenders say the southern-born slaveholders, his defenders is crazy, was simply a man of his time for whom the end justified the means. I mean, the end justifying the means. All he cared about is, you know, doing whatever came to his mind. That's it. And that enslaved women with fistulas were likely to have wanted the treatment badly enough that they would have agreed to take part in his experiments. They're basically saying, right, that they had an issue they wanted to fix, so might as well be what you call it again, a guinea pig. Like, be an early tester of that medicine to see the good and the bad side. If there's some good side, good, their issue's fixed. If there's a bad side, well, you volunteered for it. You know, it was never a guarantee. So they're making up excuses that, yeah, you know what, it's not about the consensual part, but they had an issue that needed to be fixed. How can we fix the issue if we don't address them hands-on? Like, if we don't treat these women, they're going to keep suffering. And they didn't want to suffer. That's what they're saying. You know, he was just a man of his time. He was not evil. You know, he was just a man of his time. That's what they're saying. Well, guess what? James Marion Sim was an evil bastard. An evil bastard. He was a Christian. That's it. Salaki. James Marion Sims was a Christian. That's it. A Christian that white people are thankful for, because now they get to make hundreds of thousands of dollars per year as gynecologists. I'm gonna keep saying this probably throughout the class, because imagine that y'all are becoming rich from our women suffering. Y'all became rich because you're a violent, despicable people that made our women suffer. No, on the pretense that what they're saying, his defenders, like William, what is it, Lewis Wall or William Wall, I forgot, saying that these enslaved women with fistulas were likely to have wanted the treatment badly enough that they would have agreed to take part in his experiments. Well, guess what? There were also white women with fistulas. Why did he not experiment on these white women with fistulas? Why did he not provide anesthesia to these women that he experimented on? He gave anesthesia to the white women because the white man's the devil the Bible speaks of. That's why. It's a lack here. But history hasn't recorded their voices and consent from their owners. Imagine that. You get consent from the owner of the slave, but not the slave itself. That is crazy. And consent from their owners who had a strong financial interest in their recovery was the only legal requirement of the time. Why, again, it's not about the medicine. It was not about developing gynecology. It was all about making sure that these women are able to pop out more slaves. If they have fistulas, if they're constantly in pain and it makes childbirth uncomfortable, you know, to the point where they can't give birth no more, they're losing their value. We can't breed more slaves, so we need to fix the issue. It was not about making them feel, you know, relieving them from the discomfort of their private parts or their reproductive system. It was about making sure they could breed more slaves. And out of all people, they took like one of the most diabolical physician. You know, so much. This man was so diabolical. He got kicked out from the hospital that he founded. Imagine that. And this is who experimented on our women to develop the modern day gynecology. Salakia. Roots in the market for enslaved people. Born in Lancaster County, South Carolina. Yeah, he was definitely a Christian. In 1813, James Marion Sims entered the medical profession when doctors didn't undergo the same rigorous coursework and training they do today. Meaning, yo, listen, you didn't have a diploma like you need today. He didn't do 4 years in medical school. How long do gynecologists have to study today? Let's look this up, right? He said, how long gynecologists have to go to school? Damn. Imagine that. Let me share my screen, right? Let me stop sharing this. Let me share this. A gynecologist has to study how long? Can y'all see this? Becoming a gynecologist typically takes 12 to 15 years after high school, including a 4-year bachelor's degree, 4 years of medical school, and a mandatory 4 to 5 years, I don't know what's OB-GYN, I guess OB-gynecologist residency, plus an optional 1 to 3 year fellowships for subspecialization, making it a lengthy but rewarding path. Damn, this is the reward for our women suffering for 400 years? Damn, that's diabolical. Well, guess what? At the time, James Marion Sims did not need 15 years to become a gynecologist. Overnight, he just said, I'm going to take this and that slave, and I'm going to put my fingers up in her and just see what is the issue. Where is the bleeding coming from? Where is the discomfort coming from? What, and she cannot say no. So technically, if she can't say no, she automatically says yes. So she has to be consensual. That is the mindset of our oppressor. You understand? That's crazy. Today, it takes you 12 to 15 years after high school for you to operate on women and fix their reproductive system. Well, back then, James Marion Sims just decided to be the one. Overnight, he said, you know what? They didn't, even though they may not have named it gynecology at the time, he said, you know what? I will be the one, testing, paving the road, I guess. Damn, it's lucky. That's diabolical. Imagine 4 to 5 years of studies. What he said? 4 year bachelor's degree. Guess what? One of the experiments was successful after 4 years of suffering from one sister. Good night. Our oppressor is diabolical. So, lucky. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Y'all make sure you share the class everywhere. You understand? Our people need to know this. That your blood and suffering, your pain and suffering is worth $400,000 apparently. So, born in Lancaster County, South Carolina in 1813, James Marion Sims entered the medical profession when doctors didn't undergo the same rigorous coursework and training they do today. After interning with a doctor, taking a 3-month course and studying for a year at Jefferson Medical College, Sims began his practice in Lancaster. This man took a 3-month course. Damn. Good night. The man took a 3-month course and he studied for a year, not even a year and a half, and this man became a gynecologist, paved the road for gynecology after a year and a half. He later relocated to Montgomery, Alabama, seeking a fresh start after the death of his first 2 patients. You can't make this up. That is crazy. And this is the people today. Good night. I understand why it takes 10 to 15 years, but damn. This is the man that operated on our women for you to be able to make $400,000 a year. Yeah, I won't stop saying this. I might have to make a shirt. It was in Montgomery that Sims built his reputation among rich white plantation owners by treating their enslaved workers. Why? Because they need to pop out more babies. That's why. Not because they cared about the well-being of their slaves. If they did, they would not kept them as slaves. They would have freed them. You understand? According to Vanessa Gamble, University Professor of Medical Humanities at George Washington University, Sims' practice was deeply rooted in the trade for enslaved people. Sims built an 8-person hospital in the heart of the trading district in Montgomery. While most healthcare took place on the plantations, some stubborn cases were brought to physicians like Sims, who patched up enslaved workers so they could produce and reproduce for their masters again. He didn't care about the well-being of the slaves. It was all about reproducing. He didn't care. It was all about, making sure you could produce more slaves. If you can't produce more slaves, it is not cost efficient to keep bringing slaves. That's what it started the breeding farms, because it's not cost efficient to pay for more slaves. Think like a businessman. If you could duplicate the item right here on the plantation, why import it when you could have it homegrown, right? If there's an issue, let's fix the issue right here, right now, so we could, as opposed to keep importing them slaves, we're gonna keep producing, reproducing them. Otherwise, they were useless to their owners. Again, if that woman is not able to produce, to reproduce, she's useless and she's gone, and now she has to be replaced. You understand? Salakia. This brings up the concept of soundness, says Gamble. You're going to see why. Being sound meant they produce, men and women, and reproduce for women, right? For these women, having this fistula made them less sound. Why? Because they wouldn't be able to produce like normally, right? The fistula, again, is a tear in the vaginal wall. It could be a tear that links the bladder and the reproductive system or whatnot. The colon, where you can have feces and infection and whatnot. You understand? And I think something else, I forgot. But the point is this: if they're unable to properly reproduce, they're not sound, they're useless, right? Like most doctors in the 19th century, Sims originally had little interest in treating female patients. He didn't give a damn. And no specific gynecological training. Why? Because he's the one who created it. He's the one who made it up. He's the one who pioneered it. How? By making experiments. It's called trial and error. It was a lot of trial and error. And his first 2 patients, damn, they died. Imagine this. It was a lot of trial and error. In the time, there was no need to have this FDA approved by the Board of Medical Association. No. He had free reins to do whatever the hell he wanted. Indeed, examining and treating female organs was widely considered offensive and unsavory. But his interest in treating women changed when he was asked to help a patient who had fallen off a horse and was suffering from pelvic and back pain. I forgot to mention, these oppressors were so perverted. Of course he didn't care about seeing a vagina. You understand? It was his excuse to just, listen, dive in, head first, salakia. To treat this woman's injury, Sims realized he needed to look directly into her vagina. Listen, you think he didn't go for it? He went for it, of course. He positioned her on all fours, leaning forward, and then used his fingers to help him see inside. The discovery helped him develop the precursor to the modern speculum, which is the bent handle of a pewter spoon, which is what we seen earlier, right? This is the speculum. This is what's used in modern day gynecology. How did he develop that? By, fingering a woman. That's how. Without consent. And then he kept on developing it. How? By fingering more women, enslaved black women, of course, with no consent. You understand? Salakia. Again, our oppressor is a diabolical monster. You understand? He is a diabolical monster, and he will pay for the crimes that he committed against us. Like, let me share this again. From his examination, Sims could see that the patient had a vesico-vaginal fistula, which is the rupture. With no known cure for the ailment, Sims began experimenting in 1845 with surgical techniques to treat such fistulas. If the patient's owners, why? Because his patients are black slaves. Salaki, that's why they have owners. Not white indentured servants, but black slaves. You understand? Salakia. If the patient's owners provided clothing and paid taxes, Sims effectively took temporary ownership of the women until their treatment was completed. Damn. That is bad. He later reflected in his autobiography, The Story of My Life, on the advantages he found to working on people that were essentially his property. There was never a time that I could not at any day have had a subject for operation. That's what he said. According to Sims, this was the most memorable time of his life. You understand? The time where he was so happy, you know when it was? It was he had like a plethora of slaves to operate on, to experiment on. That's why he was so happy. He never ran out of a test subject. And even if he did, guess what? He had slaves. The owners that had slaves that had, you know, women reproductive system issues, they were going to him, and they could provide clothing and pay taxes, and the slave would stay with him until the issue's fixed. He never ran out of a patient, or more so, a guinea pig. He had them by the dozens, by the loads, by the boatloads. Salakia. There was never one time where there was, you know, not a slave to experiment on. There was never a shortage of slaves for him to experiment on. You understand? Old and young, it didn't matter. Salakia. And he was happy about it. Good night. But did his enslaved patients consent? Sims wrote that the women had clamored for the operations to relieve their discomfort. Again, the oppressor is such a devil, he's going to say, well, these women had issues that they needed to fix. They had an ailment that needed to be addressed. So of course they were glad to be guinea pigs. Of course they were glad that I experimented on them. That's what they're going to say, whether it's him or the people defending his practices, right? But whether they consented or not was never captured in any other historical record. The only people who tell you they consented are Sims, the one experimenting on them, and the people defending Sims. That's it. There's not a record of an actual slave that say they did consent. As Bettina Judd, assistant professor of gender, women and sexuality studies at the University of Washington, points out, consent isn't always about whether you can say yes, it's also whether you can say no. And during that time, slaves were not able to say no. If you said no, you would be disposed of. Even so much so that they're going to claim that a lot of slaves may have consensually took part in, you know, sexual relationships with their masters. They were just not able to say no. Some would go ahead and, you know, have the courage and say no and go ahead and die or fight for their life. But a lot of slaves, they just did not say no. At the time, you said saying no was a death sentence. You understand? Saying no was a death sentence at the time. You could not say no. You could not defend yourself. You could not plead your case. So because they're not saying no, I mean, they have to agree with it. That's the mentality of our oppressor till this day. You understand? And that's how he was able to experiment freely and claim that, well, they clamored for the operations to relieve their discomfort. It helps them. They're glad that a white man is helping them. That's basically what they're saying. Really, they're not. They even ask for help. They don't want to keep breeding babies just so the babies could be used as slaves. They don't want to see their children used as slaves. You understand? Our oppressor is a monster. Our oppressor is a monster. You understand? Salakia. Today, we know of 3 of the names of the female fistula patients from Sims' own records. Because yes, white people kept records till this day. The reason we know that, a perfect example is Thomas Thistlewood in Jamaica. How do we know that he created the Derby's dosage? Y'all go look it up or wait to the history class where we're going to cover it. How do we know that? Is because he kept records. He kept a journal. How do we know that Christopher Columbus and his men used to practice how sharp their swords were by hacking off limbs of the indigenous people? They kept records because it was fun. It was like a diary. Literally, they had a diary on the atrocities they were committing against us. Well, Sims was no different. You understand? You're going to see one of these sisters, it took 4 years for him to develop this solution to the issue. So today, we know 3 of the names of the female fistula patients from Sims' own records: Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy. The first one he operated on was 18-year-old Lucy, who had given birth a few months prior and hadn't been able to control her bladder since, which is a symptom of the fistula. During the procedure, patients were completely naked and asked to perch on their knees and bend forward onto their elbows so their heads rested on their hands. Do you know how uncomfortable it is? Imagine how uncomfortable it has to be for these sisters to just constantly be naked in front of that slave master, being at his total mercy. Our oppressor is a despicable being. I don't even want to call him a human being. He's a despicable creature. Lucy endured an hour-long surgery, screaming and crying out in pain, as nearly a dozen other doctors watched. Didn't we read earlier where apparently black people don't feel the pain? See, that's what we're talking about. That's why he operated on white women with anesthesia. On black women, he didn't give them anesthesia. They didn't feel the pain. At the time, whenever there was a reaction as such, they would say it's a nervous reaction. That's what they used to say. But she's screaming for over an hour. Damn. She's screaming and crying out in pain in front of other doctors at their mercy. Anything can happen. As Sims later wrote, Lucy's agony was extreme. I thought that black people did not feel the pain. You understand? You think that I thought black people didn't feel the pain. What do you mean Lucy's agony was extreme? Let alone just the agony itself. Because our oppressor is a devil and he don't give a damn. Let me get a precept real quick, right? Go to Deuteronomy. Chapter 28, verse 50. Let's start at verse 49, as a matter of fact. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, Listen, we were put in captivity. Why? Because we disobeyed the Lord time after time. You could read this all throughout the Bible, from the Old Testament to the Apocrypha to the New Testament. And this is talking about our oppressor today till this day. You understand? The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle fleet, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. And this is who is over us today. This is who operated on these black women in the 1800s. So you could make $400,000 a year by being a gynecologist. Verse 50, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. That's James Sims. That's James Marion Sims. He said Lucy's agony was extreme. But I thought that they were saying that black people do not feel pain. That's what they said. But he also recorded. Listen, this is recorded. He kept records. He realized that, damn, she is actually in pain. Yes, because we're humans. We feel pain. We have nerve endings. You're a medical practitioner. You should know that. But our oppressor is just the devil the Bible speaks of. That's really it. And he don't give a damn. He is what? A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the old, or you shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. That's James Marion Sims. Operating on an 18-year-old girl. He said, black people don't feel pain. But he recorded himself that, damn, the agony was extreme. You understand? Let's read that again. As Sims later wrote, Salaki, Lucy endured an hour-long surgery, screaming and crying out in pain, as nearly a dozen of doctors watched. As Sims later wrote, Lucy's agony was extreme. She became extremely ill due to his controversial use of a sponge to drain the urine away from the bladder, which led her to contract blood poisoning. Damn, I thought she was going to die. It took Lucy 2 or 3 months to recover entirely from the effects of the operation, he wrote. That is diabolical. And this is, listen, this is the, damn, I don't even have words for it. White people today become rich because Lucy suffered over an hour long and almost died from blood poisoning. That's all. Y'all becoming rich today as gynecologists. Y'all have to thank Lucy for her pain and suffering, white people. You understand? Sims' experiments on Lucy were unsuccessful. Hey, good night. And nearly killed her with severe blood poisoning. Imagine this. All that pain and suffering for what? For nothing. These experiments were unsuccessful. He didn't progress by making Lucy suffer. He didn't. And he didn't care either. It's lacking. He nonetheless continued to perform procedures on enslaved black women, sometimes drugging them so they could not resist. Wait a minute, didn't we speak about consent earlier? He said the black women, they were happy to be experimented on. Of course they cannot say no. He said they could not say no. How can they say no? They're drugged the hell out. Yes, they had drugs back then. You understand? That doesn't mean they were not feeling pain. That was not anesthesia, because black people did not feel pain. That's what they're saying. Despite Lucy's agony being extreme and all these experiments being unsuccessful, he didn't care if it didn't work. He kept doing it to her and other black women so that white people today become gynecologists and make over $400,000 a year. Good night. Sims subjected Anarcha, which is one of the 3 recorded black slaves in his records, an enslaved teenager, to at least 13 operations without anesthesia before he developed a repair technique that was deemed safe to attempt on white patients. You see today how they have damn, what they call it? They say animal trials, or they have trials to make sure it's safe to operate on humans. Well, you were the trial. You were the animal trial back then. That sister had to suffer at least 13 operations without anesthesia to make sure it's safe to operate on white women. They were not going to operate on white women as test subject and, you know, destroy the white woman. White women are fragile and precious, right? What about black women? What about black slaves? They're disposable. They don't feel pain. Despite it being recorded, I mean, that's probably a nervous reaction. But that's our oppressor till this day. You were the animal trial back then to make sure it was safe to operate on white women. And these white women got anesthesia. I forgot to mention that. Good night. For a long time, Sims' fistula surgeries were not successful. And y'all keep in mind that we read earlier, when he became a medical practitioner, his first 2 patients died and he had to relocate to Montgomery, Alabama. After 30 operations on one woman, a 17-year-old enslaved woman named Anarcha, who had a very traumatic labor and delivery, he finally perfected his method. After 4 years of experimentation, that same sister that he subjected for at least 13 operations, he put her through 30 operations, if not more, right? If not more. For over 4 years, she had to suffer. So you can make today $500,000 a year. So you could become the successful rich gynecologist today, white people. A 17-year-old black woman had to suffer for over 4 years so that James Marion Sims, the pioneer of your medical practice, perfected his method to be safe to use on white women. The Lord said you'll pay for that. You know that, right? The Lord says you will pay for that, for all the suffering that you cause our people. Let me grab that real quick. Despicable monsters. Go to the book of Obadiah. Chapter 1. Let's start at verse 9. Right? Let's start at verse 9. The Lord said, you need to be eradicated from the face of the earth. You need to. Because of things like this. Like for over 4 years, she had to suffer so that you could make $500,000 a year. Good night. And we've seen a sister before her almost died because of multiple blood poisoning. You don't even know what she went through. I thought y'all cared about women, right? Clearly y'all don't. Y'all don't. Obadiah chapter 1 verse 9. And thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau, every one, no exception, of the mount of Esau, from the old to the young, the men, the women, the little white boys and little white girls that Martin Luther King was talking about, the descendants of James Marion Sims, and all you modern day gynecologists who benefit from it, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. That's the Lord. That's not me. That's the Lord who said. That was thousands of years ago. Verse 10. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob. That's not because you're white with blonde hair and blue eyes, but it's because you operated on a 17-year-old black slave for over 4 years. She underwent over 30 operations just so it could be safe to operate on white women who were provided anesthesia. That's why. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, and all the countless other black slaves that were not recorded. Only these 3 names appear, but he had over hundreds of slaves that he experimented on and failed at that. And he still had to suffer until he figured out what to do, because he didn't have a gynecologist degree. He didn't. There was no such thing as a gynecologist back then. He pioneered gynecology by treating us as guinea pigs. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. You will be eradicated for his actions. That's why. Y'all need to be taken off of the face of the earth. Why? Because y'all are despicable monsters with no remorse. He didn't care. At the time, he said black women don't feel the pain. And come to find out, one of his, like one of the slaves he operated on, she must have cried so loud. He could not deny that. Yeah, that sounds like pain. That doesn't sound like a nervous reaction. That sounds like pain. That sounds like it's so painful. He had to record that, her agony. It was not just regular pain. It was agonizing. And agonizing pain was so extreme that he cannot deny that. Maybe that black woman feels pain. She might be an exception. You white people are despicable. Salaki. Let me get back to the PowerPoint. We're almost done with the class. So again, let's read it from the top. For a long time, Sim's fistula surgeries were not successful. After 30 operations on one woman, a 17-year-old enslaved woman named Narka, who had had a very traumatic labor and delivery, he finally perfected his method after 4 years of experimentation. Afterward, he began to practice on white women using anesthesia. Listen, white women had anesthesia. This is the white privilege right here. You understand? Black women do not get anesthesia and they suffer. White women, they're so fragile. They need anesthesia. We don't want them to break, right? We don't want them to suffer. We don't even want to see one tear coming out of their eyes. But white woman tears should not dry because it should not come out of her eyes in the first place. You understand? Which was new to the medical field at the time. While some doctors didn't trust anesthesia, Sim's decision to not use it or any other numbing technique was based on his misguided belief that black people didn't experience pain like white people did. That's why. That's why he didn't provide anesthesia to black women that he may suffer. You understand? Who felt agonizing pain under his experiments? No, because they don't feel the pain. Imagine that. He believed black people don't feel pain like white people do, yet Lucy felt agonizing, extreme agonizing pain. That's in his records. I did not make that up. He recorded that. You understand? It's a notion that persists today according to a study conducted at the University of Virginia and published in the April 4th, 2016 Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Nothing changed. That's basically what they're telling you. Their mindset haven't changed at all. Not at all. You understand? It goes worse. It goes further than that. Experimenting on enslaved children. Writer and medical ethicist Harriet Washington says Sim's racist beliefs affected more than his gynecological experiments. Mind you, as we read earlier, he was kicked out of the hospital he founded because he wanted to treat cancer patients, knowing the history that he has with treating women for their, women issues, right? And the reproductive system. They said, nah, we're kicking you out. We ain't letting you treat no cancer patients. His racist belief, it was more than his gynecological experiments. Before and after his gynecological experiments, he also tested surgical treatments on enslaved black children in an effort to treat trismus nascentium, which is neonatal tetanus, with little to no success. We're going to see what that is in a minute. Sims also believed that African Americans were less intelligent than white people, and though it was because their skulls grew too quickly around their brain. He would operate on African American children using a shoemaker's tool to pry their bones apart and loosen their skulls. What is prenatal neonatal tetanus? Is the lockjaw of the infant. It's a syndrome called lockjaw, right? Which is a severe form of tetanus affecting newborns, characterized by painful involuntary jaw muscle spasm, or lockjaw, that prevents feeding and swallowing, often linked to infection from unsterile instruments or umbilical cord care, leading to breathing issues and convulsions, and historically a major cause of infant mortality before widespread vaccination, right? But he said, listen, he experimented on our children with little to no success. He said, we're stupid. He said, we're stupid because our skulls are growing too quickly around our brain. Meaning what? Meaning listen, he literally called us airheads. The skull is growing too much around the brain. There's too much space between the brain and the skull. He basically called us airheads. And to fix that, he used to do what? He would operate on African American children using a shoemaker's tool to pry their bones apart and loosen their skulls. These are the shoemaker's tools of back in the day. How was he using it? Use your imagination. Use your imagination. That's it. These look like, damn, listen, you would see these used on a person in a horror movie. Our life and relationship with these people is a horror movie. Our life living amongst them is a horror movie. We're still in the horror movie. Shout out to my brother Gadala. You understand? Yaba Sheshabaktat, Wara Karanal, for being in the class. About to end it in a minute, but this is the treatment that we were subjected under. Why? So that today you are able to make over 500K a year as a gynecologist. White people, our people, had to suffer this treatment. That's why. I'm gonna keep saying it until the end of the class, because why? You still benefit from our suffering till this day. That's why. In the 1850s, Sims moved to New York and opened the first ever women's hospital, where he continued testing controversial medical treatments on his patients. When any of Sims' patients died, don't be surprised, the blame, according to him, lay squarely with the sloth and ignorance of their mothers and the black midwives who attended them. He did not believe anything was wrong with his methods. It's black people's fault that black people die from his torturing practices. That's what he's saying. He's not doing anything wrong. They die, you know why? Because black people are less intelligent than white people. That's why they die. They're airheads. That's what he said. Our skull is growing too fast for our brain. That's what he said. He did not believe that, he's doing anything wrong, despite the fact that Lucy had to agonize in extreme pain for over an hour. He experimented on Anarcha, another slaves, for over 4 years, over 30 experiments, so that he could safely experiment on white women with anesthesia. Anarcha didn't get anesthesia for over 4 years, but that white woman, she had the privilege to get anesthesia. And when one of the patients died, well, it's not his fault. It's their mother's fault and the black midwives. Imagine that he had to specify it's the black midwives' fault. You understand? Salakia. Oh, precious, the goddamn devil the Bible speaks of. He did not believe anything was wrong with his methods. Sims' practices ignited controversy during his lifetime, says Washington. The medical community debated his methods, and some of his white colleagues even openly objected to his experiments, saying he took things too far. You know what is that? Him, that sounds like what? That sounds like Christopher Columbus. How? Because Christopher Columbus was told by the Spanish crown that he's raping too much. Imagine that. Christopher Columbus was told by the Spanish crown that he's too violent. He's doing the most. Well, guess what? His white colleagues said, "Yo, listen, you're wilding out, buddy. You're wilding out." And that's what they were telling you. Imagine, like, you're being such a white man that you're too much even for white people, even though white people are not suffering, but they couldn't take it no more. We just read it. For the violence towards thy brother Jacob, I'm paraphrasing, shame shall cover thee. They were ashamed at some points, like, damn, we're doing too much. It's impossible that us as doctors, as medical practitioners, right, we cause so much pain and suffering. They couldn't believe it. They say he's doing too much. They couldn't take it no more. Well, that's the oppressor. That's the oppressor, so much so that he realizes that he himself is a despicable, monstrous bastard. And thanks to our pain and suffering today, you know what's going on today? You gynecologists are able to make over $500,000 a year because of our suffering. You understand? James Marion Sims continues to loom large in the medical field, celebrated as a medical trailblazer. Don't be surprised. That's just like saying Christopher Columbus, they have in Columbus Day. You understand? Statues were erected to him in, among other places, New York City's Central Park, the South Carolina State House, and outside his old medical school, Jefferson University in Philadelphia. After several years of activism, the Philadelphia statue was moved into storage, and the statue in Central Park was removed on April 17, 2018. Its plaque was to be replaced by one of the educates the public on the by one that educates the public on the origins of the monuments and the controversial, non-consensual medical experiments Sims used on women of color. The names and histories of the 3 known women whose bodies were used in the name of medical and scientific advancement by Sims, Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy were to be recognized on the new plaque. And that's just outright disrespectful. They've been that last precept real quick, then we all end the class. Listen, we don't give a damn about a goddamn plaque. That plaque is not doing nothing for us. That plaque, I would not even have had a plaque to name these sisters. You know what you should do is tune into these history classes, because now our people say, well, we're finally recognizing the truth is coming out. The truth is only coming out in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge on the Community of YAHANNA. I'm going to show you what that plaque does. That plaque is this: Ecclesiastes 7:7. Surely oppression maketh the wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. You know what you should do? Instead of giving us that plaque that names these sisters that suffered in the name of modern day gynecology, all gynecologists should pay a tax to black people. That's what should happen. Why? Because you're only a gynecologist because we suffered. The hell with a plague with the name of these sisters that suffered so you can make over 500K a year. The hell with that plague. Gynecologists should pay black people, listen, a tax, a pain and suffering tax, because we were the guinea pigs that were experimented on without anesthesia, just so you could make over 500K a year today. So you could buy your house, your Hummer, so you could go on vacation in the Caribbean, so you could go on vacation into a country that your people still oppress till this day. So you could go to Punta Cana. So you could go to, where did they go? In Cancun. So you could go into a resort in Colombia. So you could go to a beach that is strictly for white people in Jamaica, or in Guadeloupe, or in St. Martin. So you could go to Barbados. So you could travel around the world. We had to suffer. You understand? With that said, listen, we'll end the class right here. You know, we will do that class next week, but in French, right? Y'all make sure you like, share, subscribe to these classes. We'll get a security announcements, and we will see you next week, Israel, for the history class again. Hey, I say Shalom, Yabashim Shabakatam to all the brothers, and Yahweh Shemala Tam Bashim Rishad to all the sisters, and make sure y'all click the sign in and sign out links in the class. The water, Israel. This is the I.S.U.P.K security announcements. We are the I.S.U.P.K, started at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General YAHANNA. When a new brother, rules for new brother or sister, when a new brother or sister comes into the school, they're off limits for 6 months. They're to be saluted only. They're here to shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There's another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After this 6 months period, the brother and sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. Numbers chapter 18 verse 21 and Malachi chapter 3 verse 8 to 10 means 10th in the Hebrew. Ma'ashara, 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you. Give to the treasury department a teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like. Upcoming holy convocation. We have coming up Purim, which is the 14th and 15th day of the 12th month, which falls on Monday, March the 2nd, and Tuesday, March the 3rd, 2026. You can read more about it in the book of Esther, chapter 9, verse 20 to 31. Reminder to all Akim and Akwatian to check the bulletin board in the hallway of the school if they have a physical location. And if anyone wants to be a trooper in the school, to start wearing all black, boots, shirts, pants, headband, and scarf. But that's why we'll give a courtesy salute to the brothers and a courtesy salute to the sisters. Menavisual Imajim, which means to stand. We'll give a courtesy salute to the brothers. Menavisual Imajim Shabbat, Imajim, Barak, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Brakatham, meaning Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai bless y'all. Yadem Mata, which means hands down. Sar, which means to turn. Turn if it's sisters, if you have any in your presence. We'll give them a courtesy salute as well. Menavisual Imajim Shabbat, Imajim, Barak, Yahweh Shemar, Alathan Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, meaning Yahweh watch over y'all in the name of Yahweh Shai. Yadem Mata, class dismissed. What Israel, we'll see next week with the same class in French. You understand? Shalom.
They said free the Palestinians, then celebrate the death of native Indians. How these other races gon' take us serious? They don't. It's silly thinking you can fight oppression with a vote. I'm so woke, I got sleep deprivation. Belly of the beast giving birth to a nation. You know how I feel to have culture and they take it. It'll never be peace. Tell them free the reservation. Till it's backwards. They don't know that they exist no more. Ever try reaching out for help and you just get ignored? Pick up vices like drugs or try to fill a void. They get a youth life sentence for a killing. He was just a boy. Niggas pouring what we living for. Life a gamble, it's like 10 or 4. Police hands around your neck, they just hit record. We in war, man, this ain't the norm. But you don't know how I feel to be black. Yeah, you don't know how I feel to be black. Yeah, you don't know how I feel to be black. Yeah, you don't know how I feel to be black. Yeah, you don't know. Mama on the stage crying. She just lost her only son to gang violence. Pops level 4 yard talking through the fence. Have you ever tried to hug your loved ones through a fence? Have you ever been hated just because your skin? Have you ever worked all week and couldn't pay your rent? Life a trip, I'm trying to catch my balance. Every step feel like I'm walking backwards. Credit card, but God check the balance. I come from where it's rough, that's why my heart callous. They want you to fall weak, that's a war tactic. Look how we live, what's scary than that? What you know about crossing the Darien Gap? Risk your life to live in hell or bury your kids. Either way we gotta suffer and they just get rich. Life a bitch, why I waste time telling you that? Cause if you ain't a nigga like me, you don't know how I feel to be black. Yeah, you don't know how I feel to be black. Yeah, you don't know how I feel to be black. Yeah, you don't know how I feel to be black. Yeah, you don't know.
Shalom, Israel. It's that time again. The I.S.U.P.K. under Commanding General YAHANNA presents the Lord's 57th Annual Passover. That's right, the Lord's 57th Annual Passover, April 4th, 2026 in Houston, Texas. All black Hispanics and Native Americans are commanded to observe the Lord's Passover. This will be the biggest Passover to date. You do not want to miss this. Fresh lamb, fresh wine, and bitter herbs as commanded by the Most High. Only $200 per person ages 17 and up. The biggest event of the year. There is only one Passover, and it's under Commanding General YAHANNA. See you there, Israel. Shalom.
Nobody else there to compare to. Train for war, men of war, and warlike apparel.
Hey, listen, brothers and sisters, man. If you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button, man. Subscribe to this channel. And also, please, go to isupk.com and pay your tithe. Drop me some cash so we can move around this planet like we need to, man, and do the things we need to do.
They're one West. They're one West. They're one West. They're